Lieutenant Sarah Collins stood at the edge of the tarmac, the morning fog rolling over the Atlantic like a gray curtain. She inhaled sharply, the scent of salt and jet fuel filling her lungs, and let the weight of her decision settle in. This was it. The culmination of years spent climbing through Navy ranks, pushing herself through grueling flight school, and enduring countless whispered doubts. Today, she would step into a world where no woman had fully earned her place. Navy SEAL training was a crucible of mind, body, and nerve, a place where legends were forged and weakness could kill. And she had a target, the Elite Joint Operations Unit based in Virginia Beach. Her boots crunched against the gravel as she approached the briefing facility. A wall of gray concrete rose before her, punctuated by reinforced doors and steel-framed windows. She could hear the distant hum of helicopters and the faint echo of distant gunfire from a nearby training ground. Inside, the air smelled of sweat, gun oil, and determination. Men in tactical uniforms moved with silent efficiency, some sitting in groups reviewing maps, others checking weapons with meticulous care. A few glanced up, eyes narrowing, scanning the newcomer who dared to walk among them. Her file had been circulated. She had seen the whispered reactions, felt the glances that ranged from polite curiosity to thinly veiled disbelief. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, or as she was now known in their world, Viper Falcon. The call sign had been assigned by her commanding officer during pre-deployment training exercises, meant to reflect her aerial prowess, her speed, and her precision. But to this group of hardened SEALs, it sounded almost comical. Some smirked. Others snorted outright. Captain Rhys Donovan, the unit's commanding officer, was seated at the head of the briefing table. Broad-shouldered, weathered by combat deployments, with a stare that could freeze a man's soul, he was evaluating her before she even stepped through the door. When her file was read aloud, complete with previous missions, flight hours, and commendations, Donovan chuckled under his breath. "Call sign, Viper Falcon," he muttered. "Sounds cute." The words carried across the room like a challenge. Several of the younger SEALs exchanged knowing looks, some suppressing smiles. Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't even respond. Her eyes scanned the room calmly, taking in every detail. The worn rifles resting against walls, the maps dotted with red and green markers, the subtle tension that hung over the room like static electricity. She had trained for this. She had prepared for skepticism, doubt, and even outright derision. She had spent hours in the gym, pushing her body past its limits, nights in the cockpit simulating impossible missions, and countless mornings reviewing tactics while the world slept. Today, all of it mattered. Today, she would start earning respect. Donovan finally looked up, his gaze locking onto hers. "Lieutenant Collins," he said, voice low but carrying authority. "You realize this isn't a place for visitors. This isn't a training course for academics or pilots who want to test their limits. We operate in hostile environments where hesitation kills. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah's lips curved into the smallest smile, not of arrogance but quiet confidence. "Sir," she said steadily, "I've trained for it my entire career. I'm here to contribute, not to compete. I know the risks, and I know the stakes. I am prepared." A murmur ran through the room. Some men nodded subtly, impressed by her composure. Others still looked skeptical, unconvinced that a pilot, even a decorated one, could transition into their world. Donovan leaned back, folding his arms, studying her like a predator sizing up prey. "We'll see," he said. "Actions speak louder than words." That afternoon began with basic introductions, the men testing her knowledge of tactics, communications, and weapons. Questions came sharp and fast. "What's your extraction plan for a 10-man squad pinned by insurgents in a canyon with no comms? How do you prioritize targets under crossfire while minimizing civilian exposure? How would you coordinate close air support under limited visibility? Each scenario she answered methodically, her voice calm, precise, and unwavering. Some of the men nodded, some raised eyebrows, but none interrupted. During a break, Sarah slipped outside for air. The sun had broken through the fog, glinting off the nearby water. She thought about the path that had brought her here, the rigorous flight school, the long deployments, the moments of isolation where she wondered if she was too ambitious for a male-dominated world. Every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of the countless missions where split-second decisions had saved lives. She was not defined by laughter, skepticism, or call signs. She was defined by results. The first field exercise came at dusk. They moved to the nearby wooded training range, a maze of trenches, mock villages, and open terrain designed to challenge every sense. Donovan assigned roles and gave orders crisply. When her call sign came over the radio, she could hear the smirk in Donovan's voice. Viper Falcon? What is this? Top Gun for rookies. A few of the men chuckled. She did not respond, only adjusted her headset, focused her eyes on the mission ahead. The exercise was chaotic. Smoke grenades, simulated ambushes, shouted orders, cutting through the fading light. Sarah moved as she always did, deliberate, precise, and aware of every movement, every shadow. Twice she spotted hazards before anyone else, calling them out with clarity and confidence. The team started taking her seriously, though Donovan still refused to acknowledge her contributions openly. That evening, back at the barracks, she could hear the faint laughter of some of the men, but it no longer cut. Instead, it became fuel. That night, lying in the barracks, she reviewed every move, every decision, every command she had made during the day. Doubt had no place here. Humor at her expense no longer mattered. She was forming her own path, carving her own name into a tradition that had always excluded women. She remembered her father's words from years ago, when she first expressed her dream of joining elite forces. They may laugh, Sarah, but don't let them hear your fear. Make them hear your actions. And she would. Tomorrow, the training would intensify. Tomorrow, the laughter would come again, and tomorrow, she would prove that a call sign, no matter how mocked, could become a symbol of respect. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion wash over her, but her resolve remained unshaken. In the SEAL world, respect was earned in fire, sweat, and unflinching courage. And Lieutenant Sarah Collins, Viper Falcon, was ready to claim hers. The sun had barely risen over the training grounds when Lieutenant Sarah Collins stepped onto the rugged course. Her boots sank slightly into the damp soil, and the cool morning air carried the scent of pine, smoke, and sweat from soldiers already drilling. The SEAL training complex was alive with tension. Instructors shouted over the clamor of gunfire simulations and obstacle courses, while recruits and seasoned operators moved with mechanical precision. To the untrained eye, it looked chaotic, but to Sarah, every sound, every movement, was data, a puzzle to read, a rhythm to follow. Today's exercise was a tactical scenario, designed to test the team's ability to respond under simulated ambush conditions in uneven terrain. Smoke grenades obscured vision, fake gunfire echoed from every direction, and shouting filled the canyon. Each operator knew the stakes. Hesitation, even in training, would result in failure that carried consequences in the real world. Sarah crouched behind a fallen log with her team, scanning the artificial chaos. Her headset crackled with static-filled commands from Captain Rhys Donovan. He was monitoring their progress, a silent shadow in the chaos, his voice laced with that same mocking undertone that had greeted her first day. "Viper Falcon," he said over comms, his tone heavy with amusement. "You got eyes on the target, or are you too busy flapping your wings?" The laughter that followed from the team was immediate and harsh. A few operators snorted, some chuckled openly. The words stung, but Sarah refused to show it. She had expected this. Every step of her journey had prepared her for the laughter of men who doubted her. She steadied her breathing, focusing. The exercise wasn't about proving them wrong verbally. It was about proving herself in action. And this scenario was her chance. From her vantage point, she spotted a simulated enemy team preparing to flank the squad. Without hesitation, she issued precise commands over the radio, directing 2 operators to reposition while guiding covering fire for the others. Each movement was calculated, each order crisp. Team Bravo, flank right. Mark the 3rd target. I've got eyes on your 6. Adjust fire now. The squad followed her directions, moving as a single fluid unit despite the chaos. They avoided the simulated traps, neutralized targets, and maintained cover, all because Sarah had seen what no one else did. A minute later, the exercise reached its climax. The instructor simulated a sudden enemy reinforcement scenario. Donovan's voice came again over the radio, this time sharper, but with unmistakable laughter underlining it. Oh, look at this. Viper Falcon saving the day. I hope you're ready to land that drone and hand us a medal, Lieutenant. The other men laughed, some openly mocking her. But Sarah's focus didn't waver. The team's survival depended on clear-headed precision, not emotion. She adjusted the drone camera, transmitted coordinates for the strike, and guided the squad through the final stage. Every operator hit their marks. Every movement she had commanded was executed flawlessly. When the exercise ended, the instructors called it a success. The squad gathered, sweaty and bruised, panting from exertion. Some operators looked at Sarah with a new recognition in their eyes, subtle nods, quiet murmurs, glances that said, "She's not just a pilot. She knows this game." Donovan's gaze, however, remained skeptical. He walked toward her, his boots crunching over gravel, and looked her up and down. "Not bad," he said, voice low, as if reluctant to admit it. "You didn't get anyone killed this time." "Lucky, I guess." Sarah offered no retort. She knew the game. Recognition would come only after repeated proof, after undeniable actions that couldn't be laughed off. This was the first round, the first spark of respect that would have to be forged into fire. Later that evening, the team returned to the barracks. Sweat still clung to their uniforms, and the air smelled of gun oil, dirt, and exhaustion. Sarah moved quietly, reviewing her performance in her mind. Every movement, every command, every moment of hesitation. She analyzed it, memorized it, and prepared to improve. Corporal Diaz, a seasoned operator with years in combat zones, approached her quietly. "Lieutenant," he said, his tone low, "you handled yourself out there. That was sharp work. I wasn't sure at first, but you kept your cool. Most of us would have panicked when the flanking squad hit." Sarah nodded, acknowledging the praise, but not seeking it. "Thanks," she said simply. "It's about the team, not me. We succeed or fail together." Diaz gave a slight nod, a small gesture of trust forming. For the first time, someone within the unit had openly recognized her skills, without hesitation or ridicule. Yet she knew Donovan's approval would be harder to earn. He was the gatekeeper of this brotherhood, and every success would be measured against his high standards. That night, lying on the thin mattress of her bunk, Sarah replayed Donovan's laugh in her mind. The sound had stung earlier, sharp and mocking, but now it became fuel, a reminder that respect in this world was never freely given. Every laugh, every smirk, every doubt cast her way was a challenge. She allowed herself a small smile in the dark. They could laugh today, but tomorrow she would force them to listen. She thought of the missions that lay ahead, endurance runs that tested stamina beyond human limits, cold water dives that chilled to the bone, leave fire exercises with every sense on edge. Each would be another test, another opportunity to prove herself. And she would meet each one with precision, courage, and unflinching resolve. In the quiet hours before dawn, Sarah wrote in her journal, a ritual she maintained even in the midst of chaos. They laugh, she wrote. They doubt. But action silences laughter. Action earns respect. Viper Falcon will be more than a name. It will be proof. The next morning, she returned to the range, ready to face the exercises again, ready to endure, to learn, and to dominate. The laughter that had greeted her first day was no longer an insult. It was a challenge. And Sarah Collins, Lieutenant, Pilot, Viper Falcon, was ready to accept it. In the chaos of training, the noise of mock gunfire, the whispers of doubt, one thing became clear to the men around her. This was no ordinary pilot. She was a force to be reckoned with, precise, calm, and unyielding. And the legend of Viper Falcon had just begun. The early morning sun rose over the SEAL training compound like a blazing sentinel, its rays cutting through the mist that clung to the rugged terrain. Lieutenant Sarah Collins stood among the squad, her uniform damp with the sweat of yesterday's exercises, her muscles already aching from the relentless pace of training. But fatigue was nothing new. Years of flight school and rigorous deployments had conditioned her body to endure, her mind to focus, and her spirit to persevere. Today would be no different. The SEAL training program was designed to strip away ego, to test limits, to expose weaknesses hidden beneath confidence and bravado. Physical endurance was only the first layer. Mental fortitude was the true measure of an operator. Sarah knew this well. Every grueling run through the wooded trails, every cold water immersion in the open bay, every obstacle course crawling with mud and tangled rope was designed to break the unprepared. Yet she thrived on it. Each test, each trial, sharpened her resolve. Captain Donovan observed her from a distance, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had remained skeptical since her arrival, dismissing her presence as a novelty, a temporary disruption to the unit's rhythm. Skill's one thing, he had muttered during a briefing, but trust? That's earned in the field. He had not yet acknowledged her precision in training or her ability to make quick, decisive judgments. To Donovan, actions would speak louder than words, and she was about to make her actions undeniable. The first exercise of the day was a timed obstacle course, a brutal test of strength, balance, and endurance. Mud clung to every surface, ropes tore at skin and clothing, and the team's lungs burned with each forced sprint. Sarah moved deliberately, her body fluid and controlled despite the exhaustion that gnawed at her muscles. When others stumbled, she recovered quickly, adjusting her pace but never losing focus. "Come on, Falcon," a teammate muttered, half teasing, half respectful. "You moving like you've got wings." She didn't respond, only nodded subtly and kept moving. Every observer noted her precision. She didn't rush. She didn't falter. She flowed through the course with an almost unnatural calm, calculating each step, each grip, each landing. By the time she reached the final obstacle, a towering wall of rope and planks, designed to test both upper body strength and mental resolve, she was among the fastest in her squad. Even Donovan's raised eyebrows betrayed a hint of surprise. Sarah scaled the wall efficiently, landing with controlled grace, her heart pounding but her breathing steady. She turned and offered a brief nod to Corporal Diaz, the first of several men who were beginning to recognize her competence. "Not bad," Diaz muttered quietly, as if sharing a secret. "You've got grit. Most of us would have cracked before hitting the top." Next came the water immersion exercise. The team had to navigate freezing open water while performing timed tactical drills. Sarah stripped down to her wetsuit, feeling the cold seep into her bones as she plunged into the frigid water. Her body screamed protest, but her mind remained focused. Hypothermia was not a choice in the field. Panic was the true enemy. She calculated her movements, conserving energy while completing every task with precision. By the end of the session, several operators were trembling uncontrollably, but Sarah emerged wet, shivering, but fully functional. The mental exercises that followed were even more grueling. Simulated hostage rescues, navigation challenges under darkness, tactical decision-making under continuous stress. Every scenario was designed to test the operator's ability to lead, adapt, and survive. Sarah thrived, anticipating hazards before others saw them, calling out threats, and coordinating movements with calm authority. But respect was not yet universal. Some of the older, more traditional operators continued to view her with skepticism. Their whispers followed her through corridors and across training fields. She's fast, sure, but can she handle the real world? She's clever, but this isn't a cockpit. This is SEALs. Every dismissive comment stung, but Sarah used it as fuel. Each doubt cast her way became another reason to push herself harder, to endure longer, to prove that ability could not be measured by gender. It was during a live fire exercise that the first cracks in the wall of skepticism began to show. The squad was assigned a scenario simulating an ambush in a mountainous region. Smoke, explosions, and gunfire echoed through the valleys. Donovan barked orders through his radio, his voice sharp, impatient. "Move, eyes on your sectors. Stay alive." Sarah coordinated her team with precision, issuing directions over comms with clarity and authority. She identified positions for cover, assessed enemy movement, and guided her operators with split-second judgment. When one team member misjudged a maneuver and exposed themselves to simulated enemy fire, Sarah's quick commands saved the exercise from failure. The instructors nodded approvingly. Donovan's jaw tightened. She had performed flawlessly again. After the exercise, in the barracks, murmurs of recognition spread quietly. Corporal Diaz approached her again, this time with genuine respect. "Lieutenant," he said, his tone cautious but sincere, "you're proving yourself out there. People are noticing." "I'm not doing this for notice," she replied softly. "I'm doing this to survive, to ensure the mission succeeds." Respect follows results. By midweek, the pattern was undeniable. Sarah's endurance, focus, and tactical skill began to shift perceptions among the men. Some of the younger operators started to follow her lead, seeing her not as an outsider, but as someone whose presence strengthened the team. Donovan remained a challenge. He observed quietly, still withholding his approval, but the slightest nods and subtle acknowledgments began to appear. The final test of the week was a combined endurance and decision-making exercise. The squad was placed in a simulated hostile village, tasked with completing multiple objectives under continuous stress, including hostage rescue, reconnaissance, and extraction. Every member of the team was exhausted. Muscles screamed, energy waned, and tempers frayed. Sarah moved as she always did, methodically, decisively, and with unwavering calm. She identified threats, guided operators to advantageous positions, and executed the mission plan flawlessly. By the end of the exercise, the instructors were impressed. Even Donovan's expression softened. For the first time, there was no smirk, no hidden laugh. He merely observed her with measured consideration, a silent acknowledgement of her abilities. That evening, Sarah sat quietly in the barracks, reviewing her performance. Sweat, mud, and exhaustion clung to her uniform, but her mind was sharp. She reflected on the week, the laughter, the mockery, the subtle glances of respect beginning to form. Each obstacle had been a lesson, each challenge a chance to prove herself. And yet, she knew this was only the beginning. Real tests would come in the field, where stakes were higher and mistakes could cost lives. Her journal entry for the night was simple but resolute. Every day is a test. They laugh, they doubt, they underestimate. But actions cannot be ignored. Respect is earned, and I will earn it. Viper Falcon is more than a name, it is proof. By the time the lights went out, the barracks were silent, save for the occasional rustle of exhausted operators settling in for the night. Sarah lay awake for a while longer, muscles aching, heart still pounding, mind racing through every scenario, every tactic, every command. She knew the coming weeks would be even harder, filled with harsher tests, longer missions, and more skepticism. But she welcomed it. In the darkness, she made a silent vow. She would not only survive this crucible, she would emerge stronger, faster, and more vulnerable than anyone could have imagined. And when that day came, Captain Donovan's laughter and the whispers of doubt that followed her would finally be silenced by the undeniable proof of her skill. Lieutenant Sarah Collins' Viper Falcon had endured the first real crucible. Sweat, pain, and relentless pressure had forged her resolve. The walls of skepticism were cracking, and somewhere deep inside, she felt the stirrings of the reputation she would earn not through words, but through action. The morning sun had barely pierced the jagged mountains of Afghanistan when Lieutenant Sarah Collins found herself strapped into the rear of a Black Hawk. Her heart steady despite the tension thick in the cabin. The mission briefing had been terse. A hostage extraction gone wrong, intelligence sparse, terrain unpredictable. SEAL teams had been scrambled, and now her unit, led by Captain Rhys Donovan, was en route. The men knew her as Viper Falcon, the pilot-turned-operator, but few had expected her to be here, on the ground, directly in harm's way. Donovan's eyes swept over the cabin as he checked gear and weapons, his expression a mixture of authority and irritation. "Remember," he barked, "this isn't training. Lives are at stake. Stick to the plan, stay sharp, and for God's sake, stay alive." His gaze lingered on Sarah for a brief moment, a silent challenge, before he turned away. She met his eyes without flinching, adjusting her headset. "I'll be guiding from above, sir," she said quietly, her tone steady. "Vectoring your approach and tracking threats in real time." The team grumbled under their breath. Some were skeptical, others openly irritated. A female pilot providing overwatch? They weren't sure they could trust her judgment in a situation where a single misstep could cost lives. But Sarah had learned to ignore doubt. She had trained for years to handle pressure, to make decisions with precision under fire, and now she had her first true test. The Black Hawk dipped into a narrow valley, the rotors stirring dust and debris. Below, the hostile village sprawled across the rugged terrain, a maze of mud-walled buildings and narrow alleys. According to the latest intelligence, insurgents had taken several hostages, and time was critical. Donovan's team would insert at 2 points, secure the hostages, and extract them before enemy reinforcements could arrive. The plan was simple on paper. In practice, chaos reigned. Sarah's eyes flicked between the drone feed and the ground below. Her hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting cameras and marking enemy positions. "Team Alpha, approach from the north. Cover your 6, she instructed over the radio. "I've got eyes on 2 hostiles moving to intercept. Wait for my signal." The team moved like a well-oiled machine, though tension clung to every man. Explosions echoed from nearby ridges, simulated artillery, but the fear was real enough. Donovan's voice cut sharply through the comms, barking orders and updates, frustration evident. "Stay on target, move fast. Watch your corners." Then it happened. One squad member miscalculated the slope of a ridge, slipping and nearly exposing himself to enemy fire. Sarah reacted instantly. "Mark his position. Enemy 9 o'clock. Deploy, cover, fire. The men obeyed without hesitation, and the potential disaster was averted. A faint murmur of acknowledgement ran through the team. Even Donovan, though silent, paused and adjusted his approach. Minutes later, Donovan's squad reached the first target building. Sarah's voice cut over comms, calm and unyielding. Entry point clear. 2 hostiles inside. Moving to neutralize. Hostages secure. Team Bravo, flank left. I've got your 6. The operators executed her instructions flawlessly. Every movement had been anticipated, every threat accounted for. Then came the real test, reinforcements. From the ridge above, enemy combatants had begun descending, threatening to trap Donovan's team between hostile fire and the narrow canyon walls. Communications faltered, visibility dropped as dust and smoke swirled. Panic would have been the natural response. But Sarah remained steady. Her hands flew across the control panel, marking targets, guiding drone strikes, directing team movements. This is Viper Falcon. Multiple hostiles at your 3 o'clock. Take cover behind the eastern wall. Follow my vector to the extraction point. Move now. Her voice was sharp, authoritative, and calm. The squad followed without hesitation. Donovan himself glanced up at the drone feed, eyes widening as he realized the full scope of her oversight. Viper Falcon wasn't just guiding them. She was orchestrating the mission. Each strike, each maneuver, each command had been calculated to perfection. By the time the team reached the extraction point, the threat was neutralized. Hostages were secure, and the enemy was in disarray. For a moment, there was silence. The dust settled, and the weight of the mission hung in the air. Donovan walked toward Sarah, his expression unreadable, a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. "You saved my men," he said, voice low. She met his gaze evenly. "Your men, sir?" She replied softly, a subtle reminder that success was never hers alone. Donovan's jaw tightened. After a long pause, he nodded, though he didn't say more. The unspoken acknowledgement was enough. For the first time, the laughter, the mockery, and the skepticism were irrelevant. She had proven herself where it mattered most, in action, under fire, where hesitation could cost lives. The helicopter lifted off, carrying the team and hostages to safety. Sarah monitored every movement, ensuring the route remained clear, adjusting as terrain and enemy positions changed. Each minute was tense, each maneuver calculated. When they finally reached friendly territory, the operator's exhaustion was palpable, yet their eyes reflected a new understanding. Sarah wasn't an outsider. She was a lifeline. Back at base, the team debriefed in silence. Donovan remained quiet longer than usual, studying Sarah with a mixture of respect and lingering disbelief. The men no longer whispered doubts. Their glances carried acknowledgement and a newfound trust. Corporal Diaz, standing nearby, nodded subtly. "You did good, Lieutenant," he murmured. "Better than good. You kept us alive." Sarah allowed herself a brief exhale. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, her body humming with exhaustion, but her mind was clear. Every step, every command, every calculated decision had led to this moment. She had earned respect not through words, medals, or recognition, but through action, the truest currency in the world of SEALs. That night, lying in her bunk, Sarah reflected on the day's events. Donovan had not yet openly praised her. He would not, at least not fully. But respect, she knew, was often silent in these ranks. It was earned through deeds that could not be denied, actions that left an indelible mark on those who witnessed them. She wrote in her journal, as she always did, each word deliberate and reflective. Today, Viper Falcon saved lives. Actions spoke louder than laughter, louder than doubt. Respect is no longer whispered. It is earned. This is only the beginning. The challenges ahead will test every ounce of skill and resolve I have, but I will not falter. I will not break. I will earn my place every single day. And with that thought, she closed her journal, letting the exhaustion finally claim her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new exercises, and new tests, each one a chance to strengthen the legend of Viper Falcon. She had silenced the room once, but the path ahead promised even greater trials. And she was ready. The canyon swallowed the SEAL team like a dark, living beast. Lieutenant Sarah Collins monitored the mission from her perch atop a ridge, eyes glued to the drone feed, her hands moving instinctively over the controls. Below, Captain Donovan's squad advanced cautiously through the winding paths, every footstep a potential trap. The morning sunlight had long faded, leaving shadows that danced across jagged rock faces, hiding threats at every turn. Communication lines were unstable. The radio crackled intermittently, distorted by the canyon walls. Donovan's voice came through in fragmented bursts. "Team, status Viper Falcon, confirm hostiles?" His words were clipped, tense. Sarah adjusted the drone, zooming in on an alley partially obscured by rubble. She could see enemy combatants maneuvering to flank the team. Her pulse remained steady. Panic had no place here. "This is Viper Falcon," she spoke into her headset, voice calm and authoritative. "Enemy reinforcements approaching from 3 o'clock. I'm marking targets. Follow my vector. Move now." Below, the team hesitated, caught between the known threats and shadows of unseen dangers. Donovan's jaw tightened. He hesitated, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But Sarah's precision was undeniable. Her instructions cut through chaos, her voice steady amid the storm. Slowly, the squad adjusted, moving in tandem, covering one another's flanks. The first shots rang out. Not real bullets, but the simulation was rigorous, designed to replicate the pressure of live combat. The canyon echoed with the deafening sound of gunfire and shouted orders. Smoke from training pyrotechnics mingled with dust kicked up by their movements. One operator misjudged a step, tripping on loose gravel. Sarah immediately called out, "Cover his 6. Suppressive fire to the ridge. Move now." The squad executed her directions with near-perfect synchronicity. For the first time, Donovan's disbelief was replaced by cautious trust. He didn't speak, but his eyes followed the drone feed, his mind recalculating every previous assumption about her. Viper Falcon wasn't a name. It was a lifeline. Minutes later, the chaos intensified. Enemy forces, simulated but convincing, surged from both flanks. Communications faltered entirely, leaving Donovan and his men effectively blind. Sarah's calm became the anchor. She guided the squad through each twist, marking enemy positions, timing suppressive fire, and directing movements that minimized exposure. Team Bravo, fall back to the east wall. Team Alpha, provide cover. Extraction point is secure in 90 seconds. Follow my vector. Her instructions were sharp, precise, and unhesitating. Every movement was calculated. Hesitation could be fatal. Below, the operators moved like clockwork, executing her commands. One by one, they cleared obstacles, neutralized threats, and reached the designated extraction point. Donovan's team emerged unscathed, a testament to the meticulous guidance Sarah provided from above. The mission was not yet complete. A final sweep of the area revealed hostiles attempting to regroup near the canyon's edge. Sarah identified a cluster of insurgents preparing to strike. Without hesitation, she coordinated a simulated drone strike, marking targets with precision. The strike executed flawlessly, neutralizing the threat and securing the area. For the first time in the exercise, there was a pause. The canyon, once filled with the cacophony of gunfire, commands and movement, fell silent. The operators regrouped, catching their breath, assessing the aftermath. Donovan approached Sarah's vantage point, climbing the ridge cautiously. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and something new. Respect. "You've saved my men," he said, voice low. She met his gaze evenly, unwavering. "Your men, sir?" She replied softly, a subtle reminder that success was never hers alone. Donovan's jaw tightened. After a long pause, he nodded. The acknowledgement was quiet, unspoken to anyone else, but it carried weight heavier than any medal or commendation. The men around them, previously skeptical, now looked at her with genuine recognition. The whispered doubts were gone. They had seen proof. As the team returned to base, Sarah continued to monitor the drone feed, ensuring the extraction route remained clear. Every detail mattered. Every second could alter outcomes. By the time they landed safely, the gravity of the operation had settled over the team. They were exhausted, muddy, and adrenaline-worn, but the sense of survival and success was palpable. In the debriefing room, the operator stood silently, listening to Donovan recount the mission. He avoided overt praise, but his tone had shifted. Where once there had been sarcasm and doubt, now there was acknowledgement of competence. Sarah didn't seek accolades. She needed none. The mission's success and the lives it preserved were enough. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, she reflected on the day's events. The training exercises had tested her endurance and skill, but this mission had been the crucible that separated theory from reality. Doubt had no power in the face of results. Laughter, mockery, and skepticism were silenced by her precision, calm, and unyielding focus under fire. Corporal Diaz approached her once more. "Lieutenant," he said, voice low, "I don't think they realize how good you are. Not just good, exceptional. You're one of us." Sarah allowed a small, measured nod. "Actions, not words," she replied. "That's the only recognition that matters." That night, as she lay in her bunk, exhaustion finally overtook her. Her muscles throbbed, her mind buzzed with calculations and tactical adjustments, but her heart was steady. She had proven herself where it mattered most. Donovan's quiet acknowledgement, the subtle nods from her peers, the lives preserved through her commands, these were victories that could never be taken away. She opened her journal, writing with deliberate care. Today, Viper Falcon led under fire. Doubt has no voice where precision reigns. Laughter fades when action speaks. Respect is earned in moments like these, not through tradition or expectation. I am no longer merely a pilot, no longer merely an observer. I am a part of this team. I am a force. And tomorrow will bring new challenges. I will meet with the same calm, focus, and determination. The canyon outside lay quiet, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. Battles, missions, and tests lay ahead, each one more dangerous, more complex, more demanding than the last. But she was ready. She had survived fire, chaos, and doubt. She had earned her place. Viper Falcon had not only guided her team to safety, she had solidified her reputation as a leader, a strategist, and an operator who could be relied upon when stakes were highest. The legend was growing, quietly but unmistakably, and the room that had once laughed at her call sign now knew she was someone not to be underestimated. And in the silence that followed the chaos, she allowed herself the smallest, most private smile. This was the proof she had worked for. This was her moment in the crucible. The fire had tested her, and she had not faltered. The mountains were quiet now, but the echoes of chaos lingered in the minds of those who had survived it. Lieutenant Sarah Collins leaned against the cold metal frame of the helicopter as it hovered over the extraction zone. The simulated dust and smoke had settled, leaving the team with the sharp, heavy taste of adrenaline still on their tongues. The canyon, once alive with shouts, gunfire, and panic, now seemed frozen in eerie silence, a stark reminder of what had been at stake. Her hands rested lightly on the drone control, though the instruments were silent. Every feed, every camera, every live coordinate she had monitored and directed had been flawless. Yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Lives had depended on her decisions, and she had delivered. But she knew this silence, the calm after the storm, was as telling as the chaos itself. It was the moment where recognition often began, subtle, understated, and lasting. Captain Rhys Donovan emerged from the helicopter, boots crunching over gravel, his expression unreadable. He moved slowly, scanning the team, his eyes lingering on Sarah. He had been a skeptic, a critic, a man whose laughter had once echoed through the training compound at her call sign. But now, in the aftermath, there was a new calculation behind those cold, steel-gray eyes. Respect, the kind that could not be forced or borrowed, had begun to settle in. "You were?" "Precise," Donovan said finally, his voice measured. Not praise, not yet, but the first crack in his armor of doubt. Sarah met his gaze evenly, standing tall despite exhaustion, sweat, and the dust that clung to her uniform. "I did what was necessary," she replied quietly. "Everyone followed their training, sir. That's what made it work." His jaw tightened, a sign that he recognized the truth in her words. He nodded slowly, the weight of acknowledgement heavy in the air. "Actions speak louder than words," he said, almost to himself. "You've proven that today." Around them, the team moved with a newfound awareness. Operators who had once whispered doubts now exchanged subtle glances of respect. Corporal Diaz approached Sarah, eyes reflecting admiration and a hint of disbelief. "Lieutenant," he said softly, "you kept us alive. Not just through skill, but through calm. You didn't panic. You didn't hesitate. That's leadership." Sarah allowed herself a small nod, a gesture of quiet acknowledgement rather than pride. She had learned early that recognition in this world came not from words, but from results. She did not need applause. She needed action to continue proving herself. Later, back at the base, the team gathered in the debriefing room. The atmosphere was subdued. Everyone had performed admirably, yet there was a lingering tension that no one spoke aloud. The mission had been flawless in execution, but the memory of danger still burned brightly. Donovan presented the results, analyzing the actions taken, the successes achieved, and the lessons learned. He highlighted moments of excellence, the critical decisions that ensured the safety of hostages and operators alike. When he mentioned Sarah's contributions, he did so sparingly, almost reluctantly. Yet every word carried weight. He recounted how her precision had directed the squad through flanking threats, how her calculations had neutralized reinforcements before they could engage, and how her calm authority had prevented chaos from escalating. Every operator present understood that her actions had been instrumental. The silence that followed was telling. No one spoke, yet the acknowledgement was palpable. It was a quiet kind of respect, forged in the fire of shared danger and undeniable skill. Sarah's gaze swept across the room. Faces that had once been skeptical now reflected trust and admiration. The whispers of doubt that had followed her since her arrival were gone. That night, in the barracks, Sarah sat quietly at her bunk, reflecting on the day. Her body ached, her muscles were sore, and her mind buzzed with the adrenaline that lingered even hours after the mission's conclusion. Yet beneath the physical exhaustion was a deeper, more profound satisfaction. She had earned something far greater than medals or commendations: the respect of her peers and, most importantly, the acknowledgement of Captain Donovan. She opened her journal, as she always did, and wrote deliberately, "The mission is complete. The canyon is silent now, but its echoes remain in memory." Today, actions silence doubt. Respect has begun where laughter once lived. Trust has been earned, quietly and without fanfare. Viper Falcon is no longer merely a name. They know it is precision, leadership, and calm under fire. This is what it means to be a part of something greater than oneself. The fire of the mission has tempered resolve, and tomorrow will demand more. I am ready. Sleep came later, reluctant but deep, filled with dreams of rugged terrain, shifting shadows, and the hum of the helicopter rotors. Even in rest, the mind replayed scenarios, considered improvements, and anticipated challenges yet to come. This was the nature of a SEAL operator. The line between vigilance and exhaustion was always thin. In the following days, the effects of the mission reverberated subtly throughout the unit. Sarah's peers no longer questioned her abilities. She was consulted for tactical insights, her perspective valued in planning exercises, her calm authority relied upon in simulated engagements. Donovan, though still stern and guarded, began to treat her as an integral part of the team rather than an outsider. He still did not laugh at her call sign, nor did he openly praise her. But his demeanor had shifted. There was a silent acknowledgement in every order, a careful weight to every command that spoke volumes. It was during a quiet moment in the training yard that Sarah reflected on the journey thus far. From her first day, walking into a room of laughter and skepticism, to now, after her first critical mission, the transformation was undeniable. The laughter that had once greeted her call sign, Viper Falcon, had been replaced by silence. A silence heavy with acknowledgement, trust, and unspoken respect. She knew the path ahead would be even more challenging. Combat missions, unpredictable threats, and moral complexities would test not just skill, but judgment and character. Yet she was undaunted. She had proven her capability under pressure, her ability to lead without ego, and her precision under chaos. Each day would bring new trials, and she would face them with the same calm, deliberate determination that had carried her through training and into the fire of real operations. For now, the silence was enough. It was a quiet victory, the kind that lasts longer than applause or recognition. In this room of warriors, where actions defined value and hesitation could cost lives, Viper Falcon had finally earned her place. And in the quiet of the night, as she closed her eyes and let exhaustion finally overtake her, she knew the legend was beginning. Not through words, not through ceremony, but through undeniable proof. Courage, precision, and unwavering resolve. The world of SEALs was vast, dangerous, and unforgiving. But she had faced it head-on, and the first walls of doubt had fallen. Tomorrow, there would be new missions, new chaos, new challenges. But tonight, there was a quiet triumph, the silence after fire, the acknowledgement that could not be denied, and the first real understanding that Viper Falcon was more than a call sign. She was proof. Weeks had passed since the mission in the canyon, yet its echoes lingered across the base. Lieutenant Sarah Collins walked through the training yard with a quiet confidence that had been forged in fire and precision. Where once there had been laughter and skepticism, now there was acknowledgement, subtle but unmistakable. Operators who had doubted her abilities now looked to her guidance, sought her insight, and respected her judgment. The transformation was not instantaneous. Change in the SEAL teams was earned in blood, sweat, and unshakable proof. Yet Sarah had laid the foundation for something far greater than recognition, a reputation. Among her peers, her call sign, Viper Falcon, had begun to carry weight beyond its initial mockery. It was no longer just a name. It was a symbol of calm authority, tactical brilliance, and unwavering courage under pressure. Captain Donovan observed from his office as she oversaw a training exercise. His eyes followed her movements, noting her precision, her composure, and the way the team naturally deferred to her instructions. There was no mockery, No laughter, only trust and respect. He had been a skeptic, yes, but even he could not deny the facts. Sarah Collins had earned her place, and the legend of Viper Falcon had begun to spread. During a tactical night exercise, Sarah coordinated the team through a simulated hostage rescue in pitch darkness. The operation required split-second decisions, flawless communication, and complete trust among operators. Shadows and obstacles threatened to obscure the mission, yet she guided the squad with calm precision. Every command, every vector, every adjustment was executed flawlessly. By the end of the exercise, the instructor's notes reflected unanimous praise, and whispers circulated among the operators. "She's exceptional. She's one of us." Corporal Diaz approached her later that night. "Lieutenant, the team is talking about you," he said, a mixture of awe and pride in his voice. "They're calling you a legend already. Viper Falcon isn't a joke anymore. It's respect." Sarah allowed a small smile. "Legends are earned, not given," she replied softly. "They follow proof, not stories." Word of her precision and leadership began to extend beyond the immediate unit. Other teams requested her presence for joint exercises. Junior operators sought mentorship. Even senior instructors, traditionally wary of newcomers, consulted her tactical insights. The quiet acknowledgement she had fought to earn had grown into something more tangible: influence. One afternoon, during a planning session for an upcoming joint operation, Donovan approached her. "Falcon," he said, using her call sign with a weighty pause, "I want your input on insertion strategy. The intel is messy, and your perspective could save lives." Sarah studied the maps, the coordinates, and the available data. "Sir, based on terrain and potential enemy positions, the northern ridge offers cover, with multiple flanking options. Team Bravo should secure the high ground, while Team Alpha moves through the valley. I recommend synchronizing drone overwatch with timed suppression to minimize exposure." Donovan listened silently, nodding as he absorbed her analysis. "Good. You'll brief the teams directly. I trust your judgment on this." The words were simple, but in Donovan's world, trust was not given lightly. She had earned it, silently, consistently, and under fire. The next mission tested her legend further. A simulated hostage scenario required real-time aerial guidance, rapid tactical adjustments, and split-second coordination. Sarah's calm, precise instructions directed operators through unexpected obstacles and sudden threats. By the end of the exercise, instructors and operators alike were in awe. Where chaos had reigned, her authority created order. Where doubt had lingered, trust was now absolute. Later, in the mess hall, conversations quietly shifted. Operators spoke in low tones, sharing stories of her actions during the Canyon mission, recalling moments where her calm guidance had prevented disaster. A new respect was evident, one born not from words, but from repeated, undeniable proof. It was in these moments that Sarah realized the true power of a legend. It was not built on medals, accolades, or praise, but on consistent action under pressure. Every decision she made, every calculated command, every calm intervention contributed to a reputation that could not be challenged by mockery or doubt. Even Donovan, who rarely offered overt approval, began to reference her call sign differently. There was no laughter, no sarcasm, only acknowledgement. Viper Falcon was no longer a novelty. It was a trusted authority, a name that conveyed capability and precision. Sarah also embraced her emerging role as a mentor. Junior operators, inspired by her composure and skill, sought guidance. She trained them in tactical decision-making, drone coordination, and leadership under stress. She emphasized calm over haste, observation over impulse, and preparation over improvisation. Through her mentorship, she extended her influence, strengthening not only her reputation, but the team itself. In the quiet moments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the first day of mockery and doubt to the first mission in the canyon, from survival under fire to quiet acknowledgement, every step had forged her into someone more than a pilot or a trainee. She was a leader, a strategist, a lifeline. Viper Falcon had become more than a call sign. It was a testament to resilience, skill, and unwavering determination. Her journal entries grew increasingly reflective, capturing not only actions but lessons. Legends are not spoken of. They are lived. They are forged in silence, recognized in action, and sustained by consistency. Respect is earned, maintained through vigilance, and extended through mentorship. The work continues, the challenges grow, and every mission is an opportunity to strengthen not just myself, but those around me. By the end of the month, her legend was firmly established. The team moved with confidence in her guidance. Donovan deferred to her judgment in planning, and whispers of her abilities spread beyond the base. The skepticism that had greeted her arrival was gone, replaced by quiet admiration and undeniable trust. And yet, Sarah remained grounded. She knew that each mission, each decision, each exercise was another test, another opportunity to prove that her legend was earned, not assumed. She continued to push herself, to refine her skills, and to lead by example. Every operation was an opportunity to solidify what she had already begun to build. A reputation that could not be shaken, a presence that commanded respect through action alone. The final exercise of the month was a joint mission simulation with multiple units. Sarah was given authority over coordination, drone guidance, and tactical oversight. As the teams maneuvered through the complex urban terrain, she directed movements with precision, neutralizing simulated threats and ensuring that objectives were met efficiently and safely. When the exercise concluded, instructors and operators alike acknowledged her contributions without hesitation. That night, she sat quietly on the edge of her bunk, reflecting on the journey from the first laugh at her call sign to the legend she had become. Her journal captured the thought simply but profoundly. Viper Falcon is no longer mocked. The call sign carries weight, respect, and trust. But a legend is not an end. It is a responsibility. Each day brings new challenges, new missions, and new opportunities to prove oneself. The work continues, but for now, the silence after action speaks louder than words. I am ready for whatever comes next. The legend had begun. The laughter had ended. Viper Falcon was no longer a pilot or a newcomer. She was a cornerstone, a leader, a force to be relied upon in the chaos of operations. And in the quiet moments of reflection, she understood that this was only the beginning. The legacy of action, precision, and unwavering courage would continue to grow, forged through every mission and every decision yet to come. The sun had barely risen over the jagged Afghan terrain, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. Lieutenant Sarah Collins stood at the edge of the forward base, watching as helicopters lifted into the sky and SEAL teams prepared for the most critical mission of her career. This was no simulation, no training exercise. Intelligence had confirmed a high-value target surrounded by hostiles, holding multiple hostages in a heavily fortified compound. Lives hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. Captain Donovan approached, his usual stern expression softened only by the gravity of the mission. "Falcon," he said, pausing for emphasis, "this is it. Everything we've trained for, everything you've proven it, all comes together today. I'm trusting you to guide the teams with precision. One misstep and lives are lost. Understood?" Sarah met his gaze evenly. "Understood, sir. I'll ensure vectors are clear and operators are positioned optimally. Hostages remain the priority." Her voice was calm, unwavering, the product of weeks of experience, relentless training, and past missions that had tested her every skill. The helicopters touched down near the outskirts of the compound. Operators disembarked silently, their weapons ready, hearts pounding, yet disciplined under her oversight. Sarah remained at the command post, drone feeds streaming across multiple screens, her hands moving with deliberate precision, marking enemy positions, mapping extraction routes, and coordinating suppressive fire. Team Alpha, move to the north perimeter, she instructed. Team Bravo, cover the west flank. I've identified 3 hostiles moving toward the eastern wall. Hold fire until I mark targets. Wait for my signal. Every command was executed without hesitation. Donovan's team moved like a single organism, each operator anticipating the next, guided by Sarah's calm authority. The first shots rang out simulated bullets, yet the tension was tangible. One wrong decision could endanger the hostages or the operators themselves. A sudden explosion rocked the compound. Dust and smoke filled the air, obscuring visibility. One operator faltered, nearly exposing himself to enemy fire. Cover his 6. Suppressive fire to the ridge. Move now. Sarah's voice cut through chaos, sharp and clear. The squad responded instantly, neutralizing the threat and maintaining formation. Time became fluid, measured only in vectors, movements, and decisions. Sarah tracked each operator's position, marking enemy movements, anticipating reinforcements, and adjusting plans in real time. Every second mattered. Every order she issued had to be precise, executed without hesitation. Donovan, observing from the field, allowed a rare smile to cross his face, brief but genuine. She's ready for this. She's more than capable. He had doubted her once, laughed at her call sign, questioned her place. Now, he relied on her guidance completely, silently acknowledging that her reputation was earned, tested, and proven. The mission reached its most perilous stage. The hostages were secured inside a central building, surrounded by multiple hostile operatives, attempting to regroup and escape. Communications between units became intermittent as terrain and buildings disrupted signals. Panic could have set in. Chaos could have prevailed. But Sarah remained calm, her focus unbroken. Team Alpha, breach the north entrance. Team Bravo, suppress enemy fire from the east. I've marked all remaining hostiles. Execute simultaneous engagement in 3, 2, 1. The squads moved as one. Breaches were executed flawlessly. Suppressive fire neutralized threats before they could endanger the hostages. Extraction points were clear. Each movement, each decision, had been anticipated and coordinated. Then, the unexpected, a secondary enemy cell appeared, moving through a narrow corridor, threatening the extraction route. Operators were momentarily exposed. Sarah reacted instantly, issuing precise directions for covering fire, positioning, and timing. The threat was neutralized before it could compromise the mission. Minutes felt like hours, but the mission concluded successfully. The hostages were secured, the compound cleared, and the team returned safely to the extraction point. The adrenaline that had coursed through every operator now subsided, replaced by relief, exhaustion, and an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Back at the forward base, the debriefing room was silent, every operator processing the intensity of the operation. Donovan finally addressed the team, his voice firm, but filled with respect. Exceptional execution today. Every movement was precise. Every decision mattered. Falcon, he said, pausing deliberately, your guidance kept us alive. You didn't just lead with strategy, you led with skill, calm, and absolute clarity under pressure. Well done. Sarah allowed herself a small, measured smile. She did not need public accolades. The respect of her peers and the acknowledgement from Donovan, earned through action and precision, was enough. The journey from ridicule and skepticism to trust and admiration had been long and arduous, but it had reached its culmination. Later that evening, she walked through the quiet base, reflecting on the path she had traveled. From her first day, when laughter had greeted her call sign, to the first canyon mission, to becoming a trusted mentor and strategist, every challenge had shaped her. The name Viper Falcon had transformed from mockery into legend, carrying with it the weight of skill, courage, and unwavering composure. Corporal Diaz approached her quietly, eyes filled with respect. "Lieutenant," he said softly, "you've earned your place here, not just as an operator, but as a leader. The team trusts you. Donovan trusts you. You're a legend." Sarah nodded, her gaze steady. Legends aren't given, they're earned. And every day is another chance to prove it. Her journal entry for the night captured the culmination of her journey. The final test has been passed. The canyon, the chaos, the missions, they were all preparation. Today, lives were saved, decisions mattered, and trust was solidified. Viper Falcon is no longer mocked. The legend is real, forged in fire, precision, and calm under pressure. This is not an end, but a responsibility to maintain skill, to guide others, and to act with clarity in every challenge. The journey continues, but the proof is undeniable. I am ready for whatever comes next. As she closed her journal and prepared for rest, she knew the truth of her path. Respect, trust, and legend were not granted. They were earned in silence, in action, and in the crucible of real-life stakes. Viper Falcon had arrived, not as a novelty or a pilot, but as a leader, a strategist, and a force of calm precision in chaos. The room that had once laughed at her call sign was silent now. It was a silence filled with acknowledgement, respect, and understanding. Sarah Collins, Viper Falcon, had not only survived the crucible, she had mastered it. Her legend was secure, her actions undeniable, and her path forward clear, to continue proving herself, guiding others, and upholding the standards that had earned her the respect she had fought for. And somewhere deep in the base, among the team she had led and protected, the name Viper Falcon was spoken quietly but with certainty. It was no longer a joke. It was a symbol, a legend, and it was only the beginning.